You open Netflix, you scroll for 10 or 15 minutes, you maybe add a movie or two to your list, then you scroll again, and somehow, 30 minutes later, you still haven't pressed play. Or even worse, you finally decided on a movie, only to find yourself half an hour later wishing you had chosen something else. Sounds familiar? Think about the last time you walked into a supermarket. Not a small one, a big one, with an entire aisle just for pasta, or an entire wall just for shampoo. When did that start feeling normal? We grew up with a very specific idea that more options meant more freedom, and that more freedom meant more happiness. It made sense. If you only have one choice, you take it, even if it doesn't fit. But if you have 20 choices, surely one of them is exactly what you need. And for a long time that felt true. Getting more options felt like progress, like the world was opening up. You remember when there were only a few TV channels? You just watched whatever was on, no complaints, because there was nothing else. Then came cable, then streaming, then 5 streaming services. And somewhere in there, watching TV stopped being simple. I remember buying my first smartphone. I had maybe 12 apps and that was it. And I never once thought, I wish I had more options. Now I have pages of apps, dozens of services, and I spend more time deciding what to use than actually using anything. And nobody planned this. Nobody sat down and said, let's make life more complicated. It just happened, option by option, platform by platform, slowly, until one day choosing something simple became its own small project. So the promise was clear, more choice, more freedom, more happiness. And we got the first part. We definitely got more choice. But somewhere between the promise and the reality, something didn't add up. And that's where it starts to get interesting. There's a specific moment in history that changed everything. Not dramatic, not announced, just something that happened gradually. The moment choice stopped having a ceiling. Before the internet, your options were defined by geography. You bought what your town had. You watched what your country aired. You wore what the local store carried. The world was smaller, but decisions were faster, because the menu was short. Then everything moved online, and suddenly, geography didn't matter anymore. You could buy from anywhere, choose from anyone, compare everything, at any hour. The menu became infinite, and we called it progress. And it wasn't just products, it was everything. Career path, dating apps, cities to live in. Every single area of life suddenly had more versions, more directions. And with that came a question nobody prepared us for. Which one is the right one? I remember the first time I tried to buy headphones online. I spent 3 evenings reading reviews, comparing specs I didn't even understand, threads on Reddit, YouTube comparisons. And after all of that, I still wasn't sure I made the right call, and only for headphones. But here's what nobody told us when the options became infinite. Our brains weren't built for this. The world scaled up overnight, but our mental capacity didn't. And that gap between infinite options and a brain that hasn't changed is exactly where the problem lives. Have you ever stood in a restaurant staring at a menu for 5 minutes and still ordered the same thing you always get? Not because nothing looked good, but because too many things looked fine. And fine isn't enough anymore. There's actually a name for this. Psychologists call it choice overload. The idea is simple. Up to a certain point, more options help you find what you want. But past that point, more options just create noise. And in that noise, your brain doesn't get faster, it gets slower. It starts second-guessing, comparing, looping, until eventually it just wants to stop. And the fear makes it worse, because when there are 50 options, the stakes feel higher. So you keep looking. You open another tab. You read one more review. You watch one more comparison video. And the more you research, the more uncertain you feel. And sometimes you don't even choose at all. You just postpone. I'll figure it out later. I'll decide tomorrow. I'll come back to it. And later becomes never. And the tab stays open for days. That's the freeze response. Not laziness, not indifference. Just a brain that hit its limit and quietly shut the door. And here's the part that makes it even worse. Even when you do choose, even when you finally pick something, it still doesn't feel the way it should. And that's not about the choice you made. That's about something else entirely. So there you are. You finally chose. You picked something. You committed. And yet, something feels slightly off. Not wrong exactly. Just not quite right either. There's a reason for that feeling. When you only had 3 options, you picked one and moved on. Nothing to compare it to. But when you had 50, your brain remembers the others. All 49 of them, still waiting. They call it the opportunity cost. Every choice you make is also every choice you didn't make. And the more options there were, the bigger that invisible loss feels. I notice this when I travel. I'll book a hotel, go through the whole process, and then spend the next day wondering if the other one was better. The one I didn't pick, the one I'll never actually know. And that's the quiet trap. More options raise your expectations. So whatever you choose has to be perfect, not just good, perfect. And perfect is a very hard bar to clear. So we end up in this strange loop. Too many options makes choosing exhausting, and choosing still leaves us unsatisfied. It's not the product that's wrong, it's not the film or the restaurant. It's the weight of everything we decided not to pick, and that weight builds up quietly, every single day. Here's something nobody really warns you about. Every decision you make costs something. Not money, not time, but something you can't really see. It costs mental energy, and that energy is limited. Researchers actually call it decision fatigue. The more decisions you make in a day, the worse your brain gets at making them. And most of us are running on empty before dinner. And the thing is, most of these decisions are invisible. What to eat, what to wear, which route to take, which message to answer first. Small things, but they all stack, all day long. And this exhaustion is invisible. Nobody sees it, nobody names it. You don't go home and say, I'm tired from deciding things. It doesn't sound serious enough, but it's real, and it's constant. So by the time evening comes, you don't want more options. You don't want freedom of choice. You just want someone to tell you what to eat, what to watch, what to do next. And maybe that feeling is actually trying to tell you something. Think about a moment you were really satisfied. Not just okay, but actually content. Chances are you didn't have many options that day. Maybe you were traveling somewhere simple. One restaurant in the village. You ate there. No comparison, no second guessing. And somehow, that meal was perfect. Or maybe it was simpler than that. A friend recommended a movie. Just one. No browsing, no comparing. You just watched it. And it felt really good. This isn't about rejecting modern life, or throwing away your phone, or pretending options don't exist. It's something easier than that. It's just choosing to limit yourself on purpose, sometimes. Because here's what nobody tells you about having everything available. Freedom of choice is only freeing if you know how to put it down. Otherwise it's just noise. Constant. Invisible. Exhausting. And maybe the most radical thing you can do today is just pick something, anything, and decide that it's enough.